Hey everybody, I'm Brian, and today I'm going to talk to you about moving from Lightroom to Capture One Pro 12. Now, I'm using Capture One Pro 12, like I said, that is the latest version as of this video. If they come out with a new version, I just might have to make a new video. But for now, I got tired of paying the subscription for Lightroom. I never liked the idea of it, and I like to pay for my software once and own it. Capture One lets me do that. In doing so, about 2 years ago when I switched, I learned there's so many cool things about Capture One that Lightroom just can't do. And to this day, even after 2 weeks ago when I tested it again, Lightroom is still much slower to use. Capture One is just quick. Everything happens very snappy, and I like that. I'm a wedding photographer, so I need things to just work. I can't be waiting around for the software all the time. So anyway, without much further ado, let's get to what we're here to do. So, when you open up Capture One, what do you see? A whole bunch of stuff that you probably have no idea what it is, and at this point you're probably wondering, what the did I get myself into? Well, don't fear. This is actually really simple. There's a lot of tools in Capture One, and one of the strong points about Capture One is the ability to customize your interface to work the way you like to work. This is your software. Don't let some developer tell you how it should be. So the first thing that you want to do, when you look at this is the default setup. I don't like the default setup, I'll be honest. So I'm trying to make it easy for you guys, so we'll go to Workspace, we'll go over to Migration. And that brings up something that looks quite similar to Lightroom. You have all of your tools down the side, you have your images across the bottom. Well, here's the thing, you can change this too. I don't really like having the library and all that in the front, I like it to be at the end. So you just Alt, drag, and you can move things around. And then I can have all of my usual tools where my usual tools are supposed to be. And then, when you get it all set up the way you want it, you can go up here, Workspace, Save Workspace, and then you can save it as your own. I'm going to load in mine. This is the way I like to have it set up. And you'll notice I have my tool tabs and exposure here, I have my adjustments here, I have my output here, and I get to watch all the images export out right here, as well as have my library and all my filtering right there. So it's really simple. It's a lot like using the modules in Lightroom. Speaking of Lightroom and switching over, you're probably familiar with the idea of catalogs. Now, in Capture One, I will be totally honest, there's a lot of different ways to organize your images. There's catalogs and there's sessions. I was using sessions for a while and decided I like catalogs a little bit better, and that's another video explaining the difference, but today I'm going to show you how to set up a really simple catalog, get you working in Capture One in 5 minutes or less after opening the software up. Okay, so File, New Catalog. Now, this assumes that you already have a set of images on your hard drive somewhere. So I'm going to name this Tutorial for Lightroom to Capture One. Pardon, you can hear the typing of the keys on the keyboard. And let me just change this location. I already have some photos right here. So I'm going to click on Photos as my folder where my photos are and where I'm going to put the catalog into. So that way, the way I do it is I make a new catalog for every job. So like a wedding, that's its own catalog. Some people like to have one catalog for everything, and that's perfectly fine too. There's a million ways to do this. I'm just showing you a very basic, simple way to get things going. For now, we're going to leave the template blank because we're not really going to work with that. We're going to work with our own setup here. So Tutorial for Lightroom to Capture One, and I have where everything is going to be. Hit OK. What it's going to do, it's going to reload just like Lightroom does. It's going to start up that catalog, and what do you see right in the middle? Import images. You're probably very familiar with that. And we just click on that, open up the import image box, and I'm actually going to import different images than what we're showing here. So let me find that. You just have to point it back to where you were. Again, it's very much like, this is the way I used Lightroom. I know there's a bunch of ways to do it in Lightroom too. And I just selected like 10 images. We're going to show you how to work these. We'll do some selections. I'm basically going through an entire workflow to show you how to get up and running using this software really quickly. I don't like to move them. I like to keep them where they are. So I'm going to leave destination as current location. Collection. Don't worry about collections for the moment. I don't really use them. I'm going to show you an easy way. I know I keep saying I'm going to show you, but I really am. I'm going to show you. And then down here under adjustments, you can set it to auto adjust. You can include existing adjustments. That's for if you're importing a catalog from Lightroom to Capture One. Not really any need here. Styles are the Capture One equivalent to presets. I'm not applying any in this. I'm just going to import them all as they are, where they are, and boom, you'll see them come in. It starts the import, and now it's generating previews. Now, what you'll notice is it's going to take about 10 seconds to make all these previews in here, okay? I tested Lightroom a couple weeks ago, and man, it just took forever for all the previews to happen, and you have to know, do I use smart previews? Do I use this preview, that preview? In Capture One, it's really simple. The preview setting is in your preferences. What you want to do is make it about the same size as your screen. Now, I usually have a 2560 by 1920 or something like that screen size. Today, I'm working with a slightly smaller, just so that for the sake of the video, so that things don't look super tiny in the video. So I would set mine to 2560, and that gives you a beautiful color-adjusted preview of your images that's just absolutely wonderful, and it loads quite quickly. Now, just so you understand, the module that you would use in Lightroom is Library. You don't use the library here. You're actually going to use your, well, any tab, and you can do the same thing. I tend to leave it on the exposure tab most of the time unless I need to do something different. So right now I'm in the exposure tab, and to move between images, you can use the arrow keys. However, I find that unless my mouse is in the general vicinity of the images down here, that's not really going to work. So I use the control arrow key because that gets me where I need to go anytime. Now, notice how fast I can flip through these images. As fast as I can hit the key, it's moving. And it comes in super quick. It takes a split second for it to adjust sometimes and focus in, but you're seeing a good size preview of that image. It's really awesome. Wow, there's a reject shot. Anyway, so let's go back to the beginning. The first thing that we do when we bring images in is we cull or we edit. I call this editing from way back in the day with film. Editing meant to keep what you wanted to use and get rid of what you weren't going to use, and then from there you can work on everything else. So I don't use any fancy systems. You're probably familiar with the star naming system and the using colors and things like that. I don't get into the fancy stuff. To me, it's either on or it's off. So it's 1 star or it's 0. Very, very simple. I don't need to have all that fancy stuff. If I mark something 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, what am I supposed to do with the 3 stars? Does the bride get that or not? I just don't see the point. I go through them, I pick it. If I want it, it stays. If I don't want it, it goes. Okay? Be decisive. Make a choice. Move forward. So I like this image, so I'm going to hit 1. And you can see the star right there showed up as 1. Now I hit my control right arrow key, moves to the next image. We'll go with this one too. We'll keep that image. Ah, look at this. Love this shot. We're going to keep it. Hey, you know what? This is the 5th shoe shot that I see from the same wedding. We don't need that one. So let's just bypass it and go control right arrow key to the next one. Ooh, that's out of focus. We can't give that. Hey, look at that one. That's actually not bad. Mom's eyes are closed, but you know, we can deal with that later. Just for the sake of example, we're going to keep this one. And then we go over here. It's cute. It's nice enough. We can work with that. I can show you something on that one too. Hit 1 star. Go over here. Isn't that just sweet? 1 star. Okay, so what we did, we just edited or culled all of those images, right? But they're all still here. Well, that's easy. Go over to your library tab, and you'll see down here, rating, none, 1 star, 2 star. You can click on 1 star, and only the 1 stars show up. That is exactly the way I do it for a wedding. So that way, all I'm ever going to see is all of my 1-starred images. But let's say I screw up and I have to go back and find eyes for this one, or, oop, I chose the wrong image in that series. I really needed something else, or I need eyes for a blink or anything like that. I can always open up those images too. And all you do is hold down Shift or Control, and actually it's Control, and you can select multiple levels of that. Now for my purposes, I really only need the 2, the none and 1. So for now, I'm going to turn off that and just leave the 1 stars. Simple so far. Then I'm going to go back to my exposure tab over here, and we're going to start working on this image. Now from here, I'm going to show you very, very basic edits. We can get extreme with this if you really want to, but that's another video, just to show you some of the basics, things that are similar from Lightroom to this. So we have the histogram, which shows you obviously your darks are over here, your lights are over here. The one difference is, and this I do miss, is you can't just touch this histogram and drag it back and forth like you can in Lightroom. That's always been a pretty cool thing to me, but it's not here. Now, I am not a big fan of auto anything, but just to get things started, I don't like the white balance on this image. Her dress does have a slight bit of pink tint to it, but I don't really like the way that looks. So I'm just going to hit auto white balance, see what it does. And it's a little bit warm for me. But if I wanted to, I can always use the pick white balance tool or hit the W key and come over and choose something that is white, say her veil, and I can get a little bit of a better white balance that way. Now, let's say, oh, you know what? This is just a little bit crooked. We come up here, we hit the straighten tool, drag it along a straight line, and boom, it's automatically cropped for us. Oh, you want to crop that image a little bit. Hit your crop tool. As you move the cursor around, notice, see, it goes to a rotate, so you can rotate it. And I can also move the handles on the sides, and there's my crop. I like to use the hand tool, the pan. It's the hand to me, you know, talk to the hand. And I'll use that, and you can double click and you can go in and zoom in to see focus. As you can tell, I focused on her eyes and they are extremely sharp. There's some things that I'd fix in there, but for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to keep this as simple as possible. So now we have our white balance set. Let's go to exposure. Now you have, just like in Lightroom, you have exposure, contrast, brightness, and saturation. Really simple. Brightness is going to move your midtones around without affecting your highlights and shadows too much. So that's what I'm going to use on that. Didn't need a whole lot. There's a lot of tools here, but simplicity is best sometimes. For this image, we're going to move on. Okay, I know somebody out there is going to complain that I didn't do more, and there's a million things I could do, but there's a lot of other videos that we want to do on this. I can't make this 5,000 hours long. Basics. So we're going to move on to the next image, because I want to go all the way through all these images and then export them so you can see how this works. Now this one, I'm just going to basically do a crop on it. So I'm going to take the crop tool, I'm going to crop in, I'm going to go like this. I'm trying to keep some of that reflection in it. And then maybe I'll add a little bit of contrast and maybe turn down the brightness just a little bit. Simple, simple. Now this one, I'm going to show you how to make a really simple black and white. I know there's presets for everything. I'm not a big fan of presets. You know why? It makes your work look just like everybody else's. I don't mind using my own presets, but in all honesty, I used to use presets just for black and whites and a couple other things. And you know what I found? I never used them because I was always changing everything. So here's how I do a black and white. There's many ways, but this is a very simple way. I'm going to take saturation all the way to 0. Now some of you might say, but now it's already black and white. And you'd be right. However, I'm going to play with the levels adjustment. And what I want to do is, this is a weird levels. If you're used to Photoshop and Lightroom, this is a weird levels. I'm going to make my blacks a little bit deeper. I'm going to take that white point and I'm going to spread it down a little bit so that it's not quite so harsh. Then I'm also going to bring the blacks up a bit. Now what I'm actually doing, this is like what you do in a curve. When you just lift the blacks slightly, I'm adding like a matte to it, just a touch. And then up here, I'm going to add some contrast. Now, if you notice, see in this area here, his hands are just a little bit too bright for me. So I'm going to find my high dynamic range tool, and this is your highlights and shadows. Notice, you do not have negative values for these like you do in Lightroom, but you don't really need them. And what I'm going to do is just pull this up like this. Now I just pulled my highlights back into check. If I think my blacks are a little too deep, I can pull them up. Doing that is very similar to using this tab, and doing the highlight is very similar to using that button. Almost the same thing. I tend to find that, I can make fine-tuning adjustments using the highlight and shadow tool after I've used levels. So we do that, and there we have it. If you want to see a before and after of what you've done on that image, hold the Alt key on your keyboard, and see right here, that's the reset adjustments. It even tells you, if you Alt click, you can temporarily reset it. So I can go back to the original, and I can see what I did. You can also do that on any individual tool. So I can see what it looks like without the levels adjustment or with it. Okay? Simple, right? This next image. It's great, except for Mom's eyes. I really wish that, she wasn't blinking in the shot. But whatever, it's fine. The first thing that I noticed about this one is that sky. We really want to have a little bit more sky showing. So what if I just take the highlights down a bit like that? and it brings those skies right back into place. I'm going to bring the midtones up just because that changed it, and I'm going to do something a little fancy on this one. I did use a light, an AD600 on this one, and if you notice, there's a little bit too much brightness to the bottom. I kind of wanted to focus on their faces a little bit more. So I just grab my gradient tool by hitting the G key, or I can go up here and I can draw a linear gradient mask and just go down here to the bottom and do this. Now you'll notice as I did this, it made a new layer. Layers work a lot like they do in Photoshop, except that they're more like adjustment layers than real layers. More on that in another video, just the basics on it. And I can change this after the fact. I can move this around, I can tilt it, I can swing it, I can do whatever I want. Now, anything that I do on this layer is going to affect the image, okay? So I can go into my exposure tab and I can bring the midtones down just a little bit, and it makes it look a little bit more natural. Now, I'm also noticing, you know what? His face is kind of pink, she's kind of orange. That sun is just a little bit too much. So let's make another adjustment layer. And I'm going to hit the B key and grab my brush, hit the M key to turn my mask on, and I'm just going to paint a little mask over their faces because I actually like the rest of the image, just not that. Then I'll turn my hit M again to turn my mask off, and maybe I'll just take saturation down just a tiny little bit. And oh, you know what? Let's just make it less yellow, just like that. Now I can show you what that looks like by turning the layer 2 on and off. See, it's a little over warm. Now it looks a whole lot better. Yes, I can do a lot more to this image. I just wanted to show you a couple quick techniques. This one, we have this lovely golden bridge up across the top here. We have a little bit of sky that is not blown out, and then we have a very blue couple in the bottom here. So what I want to do with this one, let's get our histogram showing again. I'm just going to bring this exposure up, then I'm going to take the highlights back down and see how that bridge just came right back in. Now, I really want to add a gradient on this. I just don't think that looks good like that. Add a gradient there and tone that down. One thing that I really like about the tools here too, you might hear this sound. Let me see if I can do it. Do you hear that? That's my mouse. That is the wheel on my mouse. If you go over a tool and turn the wheel, you can change the value on any tool. It's actually like the most awesome thing. You can go through images that way too, if you have enough images to move across the screen. So we have our layers. We have our gradient across the top, and I darken that just a little bit. What if I do this, make another adjustment layer, grab the brush again, just do a quick mask over them. Let me turn the M key on so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to make the adjustments. You right click and you can make adjustments to your tool. I don't know if you saw that. You can change size, hardness, opacity, flow, airbrush, use pen pressure, auto mask. I don't really like to use too much. I like to have more control. I do like to leave link brush and eraser settings. That way I can change it anytime I want. And now you'll really see that mask come in. And I'm just gonna draw over them. Now, this is my favorite tool in Capture One. I go here, go to Refine Mask. I pretty much just leave it at 300 most of the time and just wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. There it is. It refines that mask, brings it in so that you're almost always perfectly to that edge. It just works beautifully well. Let me hide that mask again. Now all I have to do is adjust my color temperature, and I can match that, make her hair look that nice, lovely golden brown that we wanted to see. Go down to my exposure tab. I can bring the brightness up just a little tiny bit. Oh, you know what? This needs a vignette. That's what this needs. Now, there's a couple ways to do a vignette. The most simple is just within this. I like to leave it to elliptic on crop. You can actually make it circular too, which is weird when you're working with the 2:3 aspect. But we're going to do this, and all you do is just bring it in a little bit like that. See, now in doing that, I made the overall image just a little bit dark. So let's bring that back up just a touch more, and boom, there's your image. If you thought that maybe their faces were a little bit bright, do that. Bring that highlight down just a touch more, and there we have it. Now, one other beautiful thing about using layers this way is each layer has its own opacity. I noticed that gradient down here is really messing up his arm. I don't like that at all. So I can just reduce the opacity. I can also just use the sliders and adjust it, but let's say I wanted to just reduce the overall effect of that entire layer that I made. There you go. And that's about it for that image. Let's move on to this one. Now, when I look at this image, first I see it's actually really nice. It's a little bit crooked. So let's straighten it, find a straight edge, and just move down that corner of the wall there. And there we have it. One thing that bothers me about it is the color. I'd actually really like to see it be a lot warmer. So I'm just going to bring that color up a touch. Oh, something like that. Then we go on to exposure. It needs some contrast. Now there's a couple ways. I can just use contrast, or I like to use the levels tool. Just like we did for the black and white. I'm going to make black blacker. I'm going to actually set my white point, because if you notice, see, I was about 1/3 of a stop or so underexposed here. And then I can adjust the midpoint right about there. If I think that my whites are still too strong, if I look at her dress, see, I want to see more detail in that. Go like that. And then I can add just that little bit of a filmic look just by bringing up those blacks a touch. I'll go up here and move my contrast slider a little bit. Maybe add just a touch of highlight. Bring back the highlights, I should say, and go into shadows. Grab my hand tool and we can move in. We can see, oh, look at that. See, the focus is pretty good. And yes, he really did have that. If you wanted to remove things like that, there is a tool right here called the Remove Spot tool. Now, for a client, I would never do this because this is part of him. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to show you how to do it. You just click. Now, this is the fully automated way of making it work. And notice, boom, it's gone, just like that. But if you want to do it another way, much like the brushes that they have in Lightroom, you make a new layer, right? And make that layer a heal or clone layer. I'm doing a heal layer for the purposes of this argument. And we grab the brush tool. And, oh, let's just get rid of a couple of the sunspots on his forehead. He's a young guy. He doesn't really have a lot. And you can actually see what's happening here. There's my mask. I hit M to turn the mask on, and you can move this to different areas of the image. I'm just going to grab her cheek just because, why not? And then I hit M and turn it off, and you can see just how good of a job it really does. I use it all the time for taking out blemishes on the face, for you know, your odd person standing out in the background at the beach, for, you know, strange things, for dust spots on your sensor, things like that. It works wonderful. And you can make as many layers as you want. You can do tons and tons of cloning that way. I've done some pretty extensive retouching using that tool, and it works wonderfully well. So now we have all of our images done, right? Well, me being me, the way I like to do things is I want to select them all. Now, it didn't matter if I have 5 or 500 in here. I do Control A, select all of my images, and because we all like to show clients that we don't actually leave any images out and every image is in perfect succession, I like to do renaming. So I go up to Image, Batch Rename, and the way I do it, you can do it a million ways. There's tokens and everything like that. I do a 3-digit counter, and I also do their initials. So that's TMW. I don't really remember who that is right now, but it's the bride's name, the groom's name, wedding. So for this is a tutorial, and this is the Lightroom to Capture One tutorial. So Lightroom Capture One tutorial. Doesn't really matter. This is just the way I do it, folks. And then I hit rename. It'll tell you that it is actually renaming this reference files on the disk, and it warns you about that all the time. There is a way to turn that off, but I just hit rename because I'm good with that. And boom, now all of our images are renamed, but they're still in Capture One. So what do? We go over to the output. Now, there's process recipes. That's a whole other video in itself, where you can have multiple different types of images set up. Like what we do is we do develops, proof set, blog, and web friendly. What that means is the develops are just the full size. I do JPEGs. I don't bother with TIFFs. They're full size JPEGs, okay, at the actual resolution. Then we have our proof set, which is downsized so that they're all equal in size to deliver to clients. Then we have a blog size, which I believe is only 900 by 600 pixels, and that we use for our own internal blog, for Facebook, for things like that. And then we have a web-friendly version, which really we should call that the vendor-friendly version, because that is where we make a gallery for other vendors that we worked with at the wedding, you know, the coordinator, the florist, the venue, things like that, and they have our logo applied automatically within Capture One. Yes, you heard all that right. It puts out 4 different versions of my image for me, and I can have as many of these as I want to. Automatically puts them out. If you want that in Lightroom, you either have to export 2, 3, 4 times or run them through another process in Photoshop, which if you're using JPEGs, now you're just saving a JPEG on top of a JPEG. These are all fresh from the original RAW file. Works wonderfully. Come down here. I'm going to leave process recipes out because this video is already getting really long and I don't want to make it any longer. Now we have output location. This is where you're going to put them. What I do, hit choose folder. It'll bring up where we're going. We have our photos folder here. I'm going to make an output folder. Just name it output. Click on it. Select folder. Now, subfolder. Because I'm using recipes, I need to do this. If you only have one kind of output, it's not necessary. But what I'm actually going to do is use the recipe name. That way, it'll automatically make these 4 folders for me. It's a wonderful thing. You can change the naming on output if you want to. I just like to do it ahead of time. Makes me feel better. But yeah, here's the thing, guys. Capture One is awesome. There's so many ways to do everything. Then, when you're ready, you hit process. Now, here's where this is a little bit slower than Lightroom, maybe. It does take just a little bit of time to put them all out. Like this is going to take 1 minute and 18 seconds to process out 6 files. But let me switch to the photos here and go to our output folder. And you can see there's our 4 folders already there. And if I go to develops, the images are starting to show up. So that's the basic gist of everything that we just talked about. This is how you can really use Capture One a lot like you're using Lightroom. Of course, there's subtle nuance. Of course, there's a lot more to know. Just like in Lightroom, there's a million little things, but on its surface, it's an image processor. If you just need to make a few adjustments to your images, you can get up and running with Capture One in just a few minutes. Now, I am a Capture One affiliate. What that means is, if you download Capture One through the link that I have in my description below, or you use my special code, BIDOCKS, you can get a free trial of Capture One for 30 days. It is fully functioning. Use it in every way that you want to. Run full jobs through it, everything. There's no watermarking. There's no feature cuts, anything like that. And at the end of the 30 days, if you decide you like it, if you buy it, we do get a small commission. Doesn't cost you anything extra, and you can say that Brian sent you. So that's all I got for today. If you guys have any questions or there's any features that you want to see in Capture One, leave a comment below. Don't forget to give us a like, and if you like what we're doing here, give us a subscribe so you can see all the videos that we do. Oh, and hit that little bell icon too. That way you get notified when we make something new. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.